The music swelled as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the outdoor venue in upstate New York. My wife's family mocked my suit at the reception until my best friend revealed who paid for it. Those words still echo in my mind, a moment that turned my wedding day upside down. I'm Ethan, and this is the story of how a single sentence unraveled secrets, exposed tensions, and changed everything. Hey, before we dive deeper, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching this from? Your city, your country, drop it below. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. It was supposed to be the perfect day, the kind you dream about when you're young, imagining love, laughter, and a future full of promise. I stood at the altar, heart pounding, watching my bride, Lily, walk down the aisle in a dress that shimmered like starlight. Her smile was everything, soft, radiant, ours. The guests, a mix of our families and friends, filled the rows of white chairs, their faces glowing with anticipation. The air smelled of fresh roses and pine, the venue nestled in a quiet valley where the world felt far away. For a moment it was perfect, as Lily's family, the Harrisons, sat on one side, her parents, Richard and Diane, her older sister, Claire, and a handful of cousins who'd flown in from Chicago. They were polished, put together, the kind of people who always seemed to have it all figured out. My side was smaller, simpler. My mom, my younger brother, Jake, and my best friend Matt, who'd been by my side since we were kids sneaking into movies back in Rochester. I'd always felt a little out of place around Lily's family. They had money, old money, the kind that came with expectations and subtle judgment. I was just a high school history teacher, scraping by, but Lily never cared. She loved me for me. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Vows were exchanged, tears were shed, and the crowd clapped as we kissed, sealing our promises under a sky painted with pinks and oranges. But as we moved to the reception, a tented affair with twinkling lights and a live band, I felt the first whispers of something off. It was in the way Claire's eyes lingered on my suit, a navy blue number I'd spent weeks agonizing over. It wasn't designer, not like the tailored jackets her family wore, but I thought it looked sharp. Classic. Me. I brushed it off at first. Weddings are emotional, right? People get caught up in their own heads. Lily and I danced our first dance to an acoustic version of Can't Help Falling in Love, her head resting on my shoulder, the world fading away. For those 3 minutes, it was just us. But as the night went on, I caught more glances. Diane, Lily's mom, whispered something to Claire, her lips curling into a smirk. Richard, her dad, gave me a nod, but it felt cold, like he was sizing me up and finding me lacking. I told myself I was being paranoid. This was our day. Nothing could ruin it. The reception was in full swing now, tables laden with food, wine flowing, and the band playing upbeat covers that had guests spilling onto the dance floor. I was chatting with Matt near the bar, trying to shake the unease in my chest, when I overheard Claire's voice cut through the chatter. Honestly, couldn't he have at least rented something decent? She said, loud enough for her cousins to hear, their laughter sharp like broken glass. My face burned. I looked down at my suit, suddenly feeling every crease, every imperfection. Matt caught my eye, his jaw tight, but he just squeezed my shoulder and said, "Ignore them, man. You look great." I wanted to believe him. I tried to focus on Lily, who was laughing with her bridesmaids, oblivious to her family's comments. But the words stuck, burrowing under my skin. I'd saved for months to buy that suit, wanting to look worthy of her, worthy of this moment. It wasn't enough for them. I felt small, like I was still the kid from the wrong side of town trying to prove I belonged. As the night went on, the whispers grew. Claire's cousin Megan joined in, her voice carrying over the clink of glasses. I mean, it's sweet he tried, but that suit? At a Harrison wedding? More laughter. I caught Diane's eye across the room and she didn't look away. Her stare was steady, almost daring me to react. My mom, bless her, was too busy chatting with old friends to notice, but Jake, my brother, overheard. His face darkened, and I had to grab his arm to stop him from saying something. "Not worth it," I muttered, though my chest was tight with humiliation. Lily pulled me onto the dance floor again, her hands warm in mine, her smile chasing away some of the sting. "You okay?" she asked, her brow furrowing. I nodded, not wanting to ruin her night. But the tension was there, simmering beneath the surface, like a storm waiting to break. I kept glancing at Claire, at Diane, wondering why they felt the need to tear me down on the one day that was supposed to be about love. Then came the speeches. Matt, my best man, took the mic, his grin wide as he started with a story about us in high school, sneaking out to stargaze on the roof of his dad's garage. The crowd laughed, and for a moment I relaxed. But as he spoke, I noticed Claire whispering again, her eyes flicking to me, then to my suit. Matt's voice faltered, just for a second, and I knew he'd heard her too. His grip on the mic tightened, and his smile turned sharp. "Before I wrap this up," Matt said, his voice steady but with an edge I recognized, "I want to say something about Ethan." The room quieted, all eyes on him. My heart started pounding. Something was coming. Something big. I could feel it in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Matt's voice hung in the air, and the room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. His eyes scanned the crowd, locking briefly on Claire, then Diane, before settling back on me. "Ethan's the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back," he said, his tone warm but pointed like he was building to something. The guests nodded, some smiling, others sipping their wine, unaware of the undercurrent rippling through the tent. I shifted in my seat, my tie suddenly too tight, my palms clammy. Lily squeezed my hand under the table, her touch grounding me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to unravel. Matt continued, his voice steady but laced with something sharper now. "You know, he spent months planning this day, making sure every detail was perfect for Lily. And yeah, maybe his suit isn't some fancy designer label." He paused, letting the words sink in, and I saw Claire's smirk falter, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. "But it's his. Bought with his own money, chosen with care. That's who Ethan is." A few guests clapped lightly, but the Harrisons stayed silent, their faces unreadable. My stomach churned. Matt was defending me, but he was also drawing a line, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what came next. The band started playing again, a soft jazz number, but the mood had shifted. I could feel eyes on me, not just Claire's or Diane's, but others now, guests who'd overheard the whispers and were starting to piece things together. I tried to focus on Lily, who was chatting with her maid of honor, oblivious to the tension, but then I caught Diane leaning toward Richard, her voice low but sharp. "If he can't even dress properly, what kind of life is he going to give her?" she said, not even trying to hide it. Richard nodded, his jaw tight, and I felt a stab of shame mixed with anger. I'd worked hard to be here, to be the man Lily chose. Why wasn't that enough? I excused myself to grab a drink, needing a moment to breathe. At the bar, I ran into Jake, my brother, who was nursing a beer and glaring across the room. "They're unbelievable," he muttered, tipping his head toward Claire and her cousins, who were now laughing loudly at their table. "They've been at it all night, Ethan, talking about your suit, your job, like you're some kind of charity case." His voice was low, but I could hear the fury in it. I shook my head, trying to keep things light. "It's fine, Jake. Just let it go." But it wasn't fine. Every word was a needle pricking at the pride I'd tried so hard to hold on to. As I rejoined Lily, the toast continued. Claire stood up next, her champagne flute raised, her smile polished but cold. "To my little sister," she began, her voice dripping with sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. "You've always had a big heart, Lily. Always seeing the best in people, even when—" She paused, glancing at me, and the room seemed to hold its breath, even when they don't quite fit the mold. A few guests chuckled, thinking it was a playful jab, but I felt the weight of her words like a punch. Lily's smile wavered, her hand tightening in mine. I wanted to say something, to stand up and call her out, but I didn't. Not yet. The night wore on, and the tension kept building like a rubber band stretched to its limit. I overheard more snippets. Claire's cousin Megan telling another guest, "Lily could have done better, you know," she settled. Diane's laugh, sharp and cutting as she agreed with a nod. Even Richard, who'd been mostly silent, made a comment about how teachers don't exactly live in luxury. Each word chipped away at me, but I kept my head high, smiling for Lily, for the photos, for the guests who didn't know the storm brewing inside me. Then came the moment that pushed things over the edge. During a lull in the dancing, Claire approached our table, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. She leaned in, her voice low but loud enough for Lily and me to hear. "Ethan, I hope you're not too embarrassed about the suit," she said, her lips curling into a smile that wasn't kind. "It's just, this is a big day for our family. We expected a little more effort." Lily's face flushed and she opened her mouth to respond, but I put a hand on her arm, stopping her. My blood was boiling, but I forced a smile. "Thanks for the feedback, Claire," I said, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside. She walked away satisfied, leaving a silence that felt heavier than the music. I looked at Lily, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know they'd be like this." I pulled her close, kissing her forehead, but my mind was racing. I wasn't going to let them ruin this day, not for her, not for us. Across the room I saw Matt watching, his expression dark, his hands clenched at his sides. He caught my eye and gave a small nod, like he was waiting for a signal. I didn't know what he had planned, but I knew him well enough to trust it would be big. The band announced the final round of toasts and Matt stood again, his posture straighter this time, his eyes burning with purpose. The room quieted, sensing something was coming. My heart pounded as he raised the mic, his voice clear and unwavering. "I've got one more thing to say about my best friend Ethan," he began, and the air in the tent seemed to crackle. I braced myself, knowing whatever came next would change everything. The tent went quiet, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath. Matt stood at the center of the room, mic in hand, his eyes sweeping over the crowd before landing on me. The fairy lights above cast a soft glow, but the air was electric, charged with anticipation. Lily's hand tightened in mine, her breath catching as she sensed the shift. My heart was a drumbeat in my chest, loud and unsteady. Whatever Matt was about to say, I knew it was going to hit like a freight train. "Ethan's been my best friend since we were kids," Matt started, his voice steady but carrying a weight that made everyone lean in. "He's the guy who'd stay up all night helping you study, who'd split his last dollar with you without a second thought. And when he met Lily, I saw him light up in a way I'd never seen before." The guests smiled, a few nodding, but I could see Claire shifting uncomfortably in her seat, her lips pressed into a thin line. Diane's eyes narrowed, like she was bracing for something she didn't want to hear. Matt's gaze flicked to Claire, then to Diane, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped. "But tonight," he continued, "I've heard some things that need to be addressed. Comments about Ethan's suit, his job, his place in this family." A murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning, eyes darting to the Harrisons' table. My face burned, not from shame this time, but from the realization that Matt was about to lay it all bare. Lily's fingers dug into my palm, her eyes wide with worry, but I gave her a small nod, silently urging her to trust him. "I wasn't going to say anything," Matt said, his voice rising just enough to command the room. "But I can't let this night end with people tearing down the man who's given everything for this day." He paused, letting the words sink in, and I saw Richard shift in his chair, his jaw tight. "See? Ethan didn't just buy that suit himself. He didn't have the money for some fancy designer label, and he was okay with that. But I wasn't." Matt's voice cracked, just for a second, and my throat tightened. What was he doing? He turned to face the Harrisons' table directly now, his eyes locked on Claire. "That suit? I paid for it. Me. Because Ethan deserved to feel like he belonged here, even if some of you don't think he does." The room erupted in gasps, a wave of shock rolling through the guests. Claire's face went pale, her champagne flute trembling in her hand. Diane's mouth opened, then closed like she'd been slapped. I froze, my mind reeling. Matt had never told me. I'd thought the suit was a steal from a local shop, a lucky find. He'd insisted on coming with me to pick it out, but I never imagined. I saved up for months, Matt went on, his voice steady again, but there was fire in it now. Because I know what this day means to Ethan, and I know what he means to Lily. So when I hear people mocking him, whispering behind his back like he's less than, it makes my blood boil. He turned to me, his eyes softening for a moment. Ethan, you're my brother. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Not tonight, not ever. The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the room was on us, on me, on Matt, on the Harrisons. Lily's hand was shaking now, tears brimming in her eyes. But she didn't let go of me. I couldn't look at Claire or Diane, couldn't bear to see their faces. My mom, sitting a few tables away, had her hand over her mouth, her eyes glistening with pride and something like vindication. Jake was grinning, his fist clenched like he wanted to cheer. Then, to my shock, one of Lily's bridesmaids, Sarah, stood up, clapping slowly. Another guest joined in, then another, until half the room was on their feet, applauding Matt's words. It wasn't just support for me, it was a rejection of the cruelty that had simmered all night. Claire's face was scarlet now, her eyes darting to the floor. Diane stared straight ahead, her expression unreadable, but Richard reached for her hand, like he was trying to anchor her. Megan, the cousin who joined in the mocking, sank lower in her chair, her laughter long gone. Matt handed the mic back to the band leader, who looked as stunned as the rest of us. He walked over to me, ignoring the stares, and pulled me into a quick hug. "Sorry I didn't tell you," he whispered. "Didn't want you to feel like you owed me." I could barely speak, my throat too tight with gratitude, with relief. "Thank you," I managed, my voice rough. He just nodded and stepped back, letting the moment settle. The band struck up a new song, something upbeat to break the tension, but the air was different now. The Harrisons' table was quiet, their usual confidence replaced by a kind of stunned silence. Lily leaned into me, her voice soft but fierce. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her eyes searching mine. "And I'm so sorry for them." I kissed her forehead, feeling the weight of the night shift. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself. Matt's words had done that for me, but the night wasn't over. The fallout was coming, and I could feel it in the way Claire avoided my gaze, in the way Diane's shoulders stiffened as she whispered to Richard. The truth was out, but what would it cost? The applause faded slowly, like the last echoes of a storm, leaving a hush over the tent. I sat there, still reeling from Matt's revelation, my mind a whirlwind of gratitude and disbelief. Lily's family, the Harrisons, looked like they'd been caught in a spotlight they couldn't escape. Claire's face was flushed, her usual confidence shattered as she stared at her plate, avoiding everyone's eyes. Diane, always the picture of poise, had gone rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Richard cleared his throat, trying to regain some control, but no words came. The guests murmured among themselves, some whispering in shock, others nodding in quiet approval. My mom wiped a tear from her cheek, her smile wide and proud, while Jake gave me a thumbs up from across the table. Lily stood up then, her chair scraping against the floor, drawing all eyes to her. She took the mic from the band leader, her hand steady despite the emotion in her voice. "I need to say something," she began, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on her family. "Tonight was supposed to be about love, about starting a new life with the man I chose, but instead some of you decided to make it about judgment." Her words were calm, but there was steel in them, the kind that comes from years of holding back. Claire's head snapped up, her eyes wide, but Lily didn't flinch. "Ethan is my husband now. He's kind, hardworking, and he loves me more than anything. That's what matters. Not a suit, not money, not your expectations." The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Then, to my surprise, a few guests started clapping again, this time for Lily. It built, wave after wave, until even some of her extended family joined in. Diane's face crumpled just for a moment, before she composed herself. Richard reached out, touching her arm, but she pulled away slightly. Claire muttered something under her breath, but it was lost in the noise. Megan, her cousin, looked mortified, her earlier smirk replaced by awkward silence. I felt a rush of pride for Lily, for standing up not just for me but for us. As the clapping died down, Lily turned to me, her eyes soft. "I love you," she said into the mic, before handing it back and sitting down. I pulled her close, whispering the same back, my voice thick. The band, sensing the need to move on, launched into a lively song, and slowly, guests started drifting back to the dance floor, but the damage was done. The Harrisons' table remained quiet, their usual chatter replaced by tense whispers. I caught snippets, Diane saying, "We didn't mean it like that," and Claire defending herself with a weak, "It was just a joke." But it wasn't, and everyone knew it. The rest of the night blurred into a mix of relief and awkwardness. Some guests came up to me offering handshakes and words of support. "That took guts," one of Lily's uncles said, clapping me on the back. "Don't let them get to you." My friends rallied around us, turning the reception into a celebration of what really mattered. Matt stayed close, his grin back in place like he'd just won a battle we didn't know we were fighting. But as the evening wound down, the consequences started to show. Claire left early, claiming a headache, her husband trailing behind with an apologetic nod. Diane and Richard stuck it out, but their smiles were forced, their goodbyes stiff. In the days that followed, things shifted. Lily and I honeymooned in a quiet cabin upstate, away from the drama, where we talked about everything. She confronted her family over the phone, firm, but open to healing. Claire apologized, sort of, blaming it on stress from her own life. Diane took longer, but eventually sent a letter, admitting she'd been wrong, that her protectiveness had crossed a line. Richard followed suit, inviting us to dinner to make amends. It wasn't perfect, trust takes time to rebuild, but we started mending fences. The wedding didn't fall apart, if anything, it made our bond stronger. We cut ties with the toxic whispers, focusing on the people who lifted us up. Looking back, that night taught me something profound. Family isn't just blood, it's the ones who stand by you when the world tries to tear you down. Weddings bring out the best and worst in people, exposing cracks we ignore in everyday life. But in those moments of truth, you see who really matters. It's not about the suit or the status, it's about heart, loyalty, and choosing love over judgment. If this story hit home for you, think about your own experiences. What's one wedding moment that surprised you? Share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this tale, hit that subscribe button for more real-life dramas that remind us we're all human. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.